My name is Caitlin Flint. I am 21 years old, currently a student at Dartmouth College. I originally grew up in New Orleans, or more correctly, I grew up in Metter, Louisiana. I attended high school in New Orleans and worked in a restaurant in the French Quarter of New Orleans. My father is from New Orleans. My mother was originally from Syracuse, New York. For slang, the slang words that I am going to talk about are going to be the words neutral ground, lanyap, brake tag, po' boy, crawfish, the interstate, making groceries, and the phrase NOLA. The first slang word is the term neutral ground. Neutral ground is a phrase for the area in between the two, in the middle of a street, very similar to a median. The difference between a regular median and a neutral ground is where a median is usually concrete. A neutral ground has, in a lot of cases, grass or trees or a canal or a streetcar running through it. So it tends to be larger. I also only actually associate neutral grounds with New Orleans. I don't use the phrase in any other city. Originally, the phrase comes from historically from the rather large spaces in between the two direction streets of Canal Street, which separates the French quarter of the city where the Creoles and the French and Spanish descendants lived, and where the American, white Anglo-Saxon Americans lived. And so, since Canal Street was this dividing line between the two neighborhoods, it was considered a neutral ground. Hence, the phrase is used to describe all similar geographical features. The second word is the phrase lanyap. Lanyap comes from a French word. I'm actually not sure what lanyap really means in French, but growing up, my mother always described it to me as meaning a little something extra. So, lanyap was always used as to describe, like, if there was a small little gift that someone got and tossed into the pile at Christmas or for a birthday, or when they were visiting from afar and they decided to bring a gift. They call it, it's just a little lanyap for you. It's also a phrase that is used almost exclusively in the New Orleans restaurant dining industry. As I said, I worked as a server, and in a lot of the New Orleans restaurants, there is a practice of sending out what are called lagniaps to valued customer patrons. They're just small little plates made by the chefs that were just a taste. Just a small little something extra for the patrons who came in. In a lot of cases, these were for people who knew the owners, who were influential business folk. In general, it just kind of helped reinforce this idea that this little something extra was for those who were family. So I guess it kind of fits in with how my family always looked at it as just being kind of like a little nice something. But that's lanyap. The third slang word is brake tag. Brake tag is an inspection sticker that is given to you by the DMV, the Louisiana Department of Motor Vehicles, when your car has passed inspection and is able to be driven. You need to get it renewed every year or two. It's the exact same as an inspection sticker in any other state. I do not know why it's called a brake tag, but everyone I know who is from New Orleans has always called it a brake tag. So to use it in the sentence, oh, hey Dale, I noticed that your brake tag was expired. You may want to go stop by the DMV to get a new one. That would be about it. The fourth bit of slang is food slang. So a po' boy. A po' boy is a type of sandwich. It is a very similar to a sub. It is on French bread, which is very crispy and crunchy on the outside, very, very soft and fluffy on the inside. White bread. It usually has mayonnaise on it and some sort of meat, whether that meat is actual deli meat or cooked roast beef, or whether it's fried fish or even grilled fish. Honestly, it depends on which particular shop you're buying the po' boy from. Po' boys are a traditional New Orleans food. It's basically a sandwich, but they're just little twists that make it a little bit different. The original phrase po' boy is basically a shortening of the two words poor boy. And so in some restaurants in New Orleans, you'll see it advertised as a poor boy. But that's a lot more difficult to say, especially if you're speaking with a genuine New Orleans accent, which I don't actually possess, but a po' boy. Originally, it comes from when immigrants to New Orleans decided that they wanted to start making and selling food that was easy to hold while they worked. And so, like most sandwich stories, they took meat and vegetables, they put it in between soft baguettes and French bread, and then they made a sandwich. And because it was being sold to the working class, they were called poor boys. And so that obviously then devolved into po' boy. And so po' boys are just a quintessential New Orleans thing. My personal favorite type of po' boy is grilled shrimp with mayonnaise, lettuce, tomato, and hot sauce. The next bit of slang is a little bit different. It's more of a phrasing thing. Calling it the interstate. In New Orleans, there is one interstate that runs through the city. It is Interstate 10. It runs from north to south. It runs east-west across the southern United States from Florida to Texas. It bisects the city pretty completely, and so because it is the only actual interstate in New Orleans, it is referred to as the interstate. This is one particular thing that I've noted while I have been away from New Orleans. I don't refer to it as Interstate 10 particularly often. I've always called it the interstate, and whenever I say that to any of my out-of-town friends, majority of them are entirely confused because they are from places where there are multiple interstates, and that it makes more sense to refer to it by the route name. So this is just one particular quirk about the city. Using it in a sentence would be something along the lines of, oh, do you live on the north side or the south side of the interstate? And that would be about it. The next bit of slang is another culinary one. It's a little bit more well-known, but still enough that I think it should be mentioned. The word crawfish. So crawfish refers to a small marine animal that looks very similar to a lobster. It's got a lot of different names. Crawfish, crawdad, mudbug, crayfish. I have heard crayfish more often than I have heard anything else when I have been outside the city of New Orleans, or rather the state of Louisiana, but I have always known it as crawfish because of the perennial crawfish boils that occur in New Orleans. But crawfish is a Louisiana slang word for that particular marine animal. The phrase making groceries is the next slang word. It is not one that I actually personally use particularly often, but I have met several people who use it. I'm not sure what the etymology of it is or why people say it, but to make groceries is to go visit the grocery store and pick up your groceries. So to use it in a sentence, oh, Grandma is currently in town making groceries. She'll be back to cook at 4. And so that would be that. And then the last bit of slang that I was going to mention is the term NOLA. N-O-L-A. NOLA is short for New Orleans, Louisiana. It's not used particularly often. It is used in a lot of cases to refer to the city by locals. There is, in fact, a NOLA.com, which is a very popular news site for the city, especially for anyone who, like me, does not live in the city right now, for gaining knowledge. In a lot of cases, it's used by the tourist industry to push for tourism, and I imagine that's how it first began. But the locals started using it themselves to refer to the city. And so often you hear NOLA as being described by people who are out of state about the city, or when talking about things like hurricanes. But you don't hear it a lot when you're actually in the city. But it is used by New Orleans locals. So those are these immediate slang words that come to mind when I think New Orleans, and I hope this is helpful.